that 3-second or 5-second countdown before starting. And even though I'm starting to record, we're not starting yet.
Okay.
I'm starting to record, but we haven't yet begun. We'll do a 5-second countdown.
Recording in progress.
So we haven't yet begun.
Can
you hear? Okay.
Yep.
Now? Mm-hmm. Yes? Okay. Hello, it is Monday, December the 9th. I call the meeting of the Monterey Public Library Board of Library Trustees to order. Francesca, could you please do the roll call and give instructions for anyone to join?
Yes. Trustee Petty,
Present.
Trustee Joshi,
Present.
Trustee Moreau,
Here.
Vice Chair De Leon,
Here.
and Chair Silvera.
Here.
And information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is available on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer will be accurate with no delay. And here at the library, we do ask attendees to keep your phones and devices muted. We look forward to having you participate in today's meeting.
Thank you. All right, we'll start with the consent agenda, which today includes approval of October minutes, as well as 2 informational reports, one from our library director and museums director for covering 2 months, 3 months. And also the public libraries survey report. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? So moved. Second. Is there anything that any trustee would like to pull out to the regular agenda for further discussion? Okay. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda? No. Hearing none, we will go on to the regular agenda.
Chair, I wish to be recorded as abstaining because it's inappropriate to be doing this at a special meeting.
Okay. All right.
Just wanted the record to be accurate.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Now it's time for general public comments. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on the subject. Carry on. Okay. There is quite a bit on today's agenda since we did not have a meeting in November, and Diane and I had asked Brian to compile information on a bunch of subjects, which he did. Thank you very much. And they're all very important subjects. It may be that we cannot have a totally complete discussion of these, so I'm wanting to get to every one of them, but and there will be time for everyone to ask questions or make comments. But if it seems like it's going to evolve into a longer discussion, or we need more background so that we can move forward on an issue, like after about 10 or 15 minutes, then Diane and Francesca are going to help me keep the meeting easy so we can get to every subject. Okay, for our first item, we're reviewing short-term fund development activities and goals, and we're joined by Ali Ladio, who is the president of the board of the Princeton Foundation.
You may kick it off?
Sure.
Sure, thank you.
Chair, thank you, Trustees, and thank you, Holly, for joining us today. So this is just kind of a discussion on what activities we have going on. As you've probably seen, our MC Gives project is on the local history collection in the California History Room. That's going to be one of our larger kind of activities for the remainder of this year as of right now to focus on that. As of printing, we were close to $30,000 raised, but we tend to get a lot more at the end of the calendar year. The last couple of weeks of the calendar year, we will get quite a bulk of donations from the past couple of years pattern. But I worked on an advertisement and we worked on some communication with Ali and the Friends of Foundation on that project, because that project is submitted by the Friends of Foundation, so that was done in collaboration right there. We've talked with our team here about doing a donor event for the end of December, and that would be including inviting people from the 1849 Society. We're looking at solidifying a date for that event coming up very soon. And I think along with that, Ali and I have talked about doing a spring appeal letter in this, and then scheduling one-to-one donor engagement. And then as well as chocolate and wine is already scheduled for February. So we already got that on the calendar. So just want to note also that the staff position for fund development is currently vacant, but that position is a part-time seasonal position. It's funded entirely by the Library Trust Fund and currently, and so funds that position raises funds towards the library endowment and library trust fund. And the next agenda item has more specifics in terms of the amounts for the trust fund and the endowment. But with that also, you'll see the 1849 Legacy Society, and that's the markers inside the library. These, those are folks that make gifts to the Monterey Public Library Endowment, have made plans and bequests, trust distribution, or other deferred gifts to the Monterey Public Library or Friends of Foundation, and or were charter members of an 1849 society, or gifts of 1,849 to the endowment fund. As of right now, there's kind of been some discussion about, do we change the amount? Do we put in a minimum amount for that endowment for somebody to get recognized on the 1849 society? And how do we kind of highlight that as well? So because people have asked about that, people have made different donations and have said, that's where we put up the fish on the wall, and they've said, like, how do I get a fish? Like, where do I get that? And so I think having more on that kind of space right there about how you get that, I think would be helpful for another kind of fundraising opportunity. With that, Ali, I don't know if you wanted to add anything?
Yeah, I would just say that we're excited to send out some individual and specific renewal asks for giving. It's been a little while since we individually followed up with donors from the last few years and said, you've been a long-time supporter, please make a gift again. We've been doing more of the, I say we as a partnership. It's been a little bit less of the one-on-one asking. So I'm excited to use MC Gives and then continue in the new year with reaching out to our donors and helping them feel connected to what we're doing and having an opportunity to make a gift. And I'll just add for chocolate and wine, most of the fundraising went really well on that last year. We raised more than ever before, having to do with really strong auction and also ticket prices and a lot of registrations. This year, most things will stay really similar looking, but one area we're doing more work in is corporate sponsorship outreach, which is, I think, our biggest area for potential growth for the fundraising piece. So I'm excited to see what we can do with some additional partnerships. So that would be exciting.
So as we go forward, we're going to continue with our, we have a fund development group meeting, which we meet as a team and kind of look at the focus on that. And I think this is really just looking at letting the board know about the short-term goals, because as we've talked, and Ali and I have talked about setting up longer-term goals, and after we get past chocolate and wine, because we have a lot going on right now, this like December, January, February, once we get through all of that, at setting up a little bit more about the, fund development plan and working with everybody on that, so.
Yes, well, one more thing, just that we're sort of, without having someone in the fund development coordinator position, I think we're sort of, like Brian said, we're filling in the necessities over the next couple of months with the big priorities, that are going on, but, I look forward to figuring out what that will look like moving forward, because will definitely be a lack of some of that support that the Friends Foundation has seen over the last, from in the past when it comes to fundraising, and so just something to keep an eye on and keep the discussions about.
Okay, Garish and then Marcia?
What projects do we have in mind for these funds that we're raising?
Well, the MC Gibbs project is specific, and you know about that one already, right? Okay, good. And the rest of our the Friends Foundation funding ends up being distributed through wish lists, library wish lists that come from Brian. So every quarter we go to, of course, Brian and see what's on the wish list, and it'll stay the same moving forward. Although at our last Fund Development Committee meeting, we did broach the conversation about, do we want to change from quarterly to less frequent but more impactful? And are there things coming up in 2025 that would be bigger projects that we could start raising money towards? And so we're at the beginning of that kind of conversation, but usually we just address what the library needs most.
And I can just follow up with that.
Please. And also, what kind of, how much does each project need? What are our goals? What do we need?
It depends really on what's there, because like some of the things are, like we've used the Friends and Foundation wish list to do things like the tables we're at, working on upgrades and around the building, working on new furnishings around there, supporting programs, supporting online resources, those kind of things. So supporting ebooks or adding on to zip books. And some of those items are smaller asks, but they're, it could be between $1,000 to like $10,000. But examples recently is we were getting around $30,000, I think, last time. And so with that, we're going to replace the book drops on the outside on Pacific Street, because right now both of them face into the street. So if you're walking up to it, you actually have to walk into the street to drop off your materials. So this will actually have one facing the street and one facing on the sidewalk. So it's not a hazard for anybody trying to access the book drops. And then also replacing the chairs here inside the community room and new dollies to move them in and out. And then we also added, I know Ken has been working on a new electronic resource. We had talked about some music resources. So those were what we had for the last wish list. So it does change.
I was thinking more about the big ticket items, what we need to. Yeah, major remodeling in mind or anything like that.
I mean, with that, that'd be more of a capital plan. I think with that, if there was something like that, we would have to come in very specifically about having a capital plan and then having a communication about this is what the capital plan would be. And then a lot of times with capital plans, it's like donor naming rights or, just what specific areas, and then a construction plan, different abilities for that, where I think we don't have all the approvals for that yet. I mean, there are definitely, because we have the big plan for group 4, but that is just a, $20 to $40 million plan. That's a huge remodel plan. And I think the city is still, from what I've heard from the mayor or, other people on the councils, they're not entirely sure of the space for the library. So I think going into a large capital plan without having all the stakeholders on board, it would be premature in my mind. So I think just setting aside funding though, for the Friends and Foundation towards those projects is a really smart plan to do.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is kind of a phone question thing, but if I decide I want to give money to the library and I write a check for $1,000, does that go to the endowment or does it go to the trust fund or where does it go? I know that when we formed the Friends and Foundation, it used to be very confusing because it was very, we had to ask people where they wanted it to go. So at this point, it goes into the trust fund
Yeah. So,
unless they specifically say if they wanted to go to the endowment. Is that right?
right, and so some people do have, funds that they put on like a qualified charitable distribution, and they will sign it up to go into the endowment. Some people will do on that. A lot of the checks that come out to the desk, everything will, or mailed to us, will go into the trust fund. And I think, but if you send a check to the Monterey Public Library Friends and Foundation,
It goes into the trust fund.
what goes,
It goes to the Monterey Public Library Friends and Foundation and then ends up being gifted back in the form of wish list,
Right, but
checks,
it's,
et cetera. And it ends up in the trust fund anyway.
it ends up.
unless, so the 1849 Society though was established for the endowment, right?
Yes.
So everybody's $1,849 went into the endowment, right?
The initial members were at 1,849.
Right.
The follow-up members just donated to the amount, not without a minimum donation.
Right, no, I understand that, but all the money that revolved around that 1849 society, the whole idea was that it would go into the endowment.
Yes,
Originally,
Yes. Okay.
And
And the endowment is the one that's at the, community foundation, and the trust fund is a city account, and so that's why it has to go through city council.
right.
Okay.
So if a check just comes to the library with no
Right.
specifications, it would go right to the trust. But most of the asks that go out end up being through the Friends and Foundation. That's our biggest, mode for asking and giving clicks and buttons, right? You don't really send out give now buttons, for people to give to the trust online. We're using the Friends and Foundation as the mode for things like grants and MC Gives and most of our ask messaging.
Right, but if in fact you send me an appeal
Mhm.
and I respond to that appeal, the money will end up in the trust fund, right?
if that's what we state to donate, if the letter comes from, like, right, eventually, but I will say, like, one thing comes in is that sometimes people donate and they will say, I want this to go to children, like children's books or something like that, and we'll mark that, those kind of things like that. That does happen too, and we,
So you have a bookkeeping apparatus that tracks it to go into a place, but where it physically goes, I mean, where it's really held is in one account, that's a city account, right?
yeah, so that's sort of the city and the bank, right? But that's where we build up the trust fund account and, expenditure. And so those things, or that's where you'll see the revenue. That's on the next agenda item. too, where we'll have some of the revenues on there, the revenues and expenditures.
Right.
But typically the revenues will all come in through there.
So now I've got a second question that's totally different, and that is, the funding, you have a chunk of funding for that person, what it was called, the
Fund
fund
development.
development.
Yeah.
And you use that money to hire consultants, or can you use it for, related to fundraising, but can you use it for other things?
So that position, I mean, there's an account, each account has a different item code.
Right.
And that's specifically for part-time seasonal staff. So we have like a code for full-time staff, full code for regular part-time staff, and a code for part-time seasonal staff. And we cannot move funds from that account into like a contract or some, service account, which typically like a contract. If you had a contract person that said, okay, it's gonna cost me $14,000 to do this service,
Mhm.
that would be like a professional service contract, so I can't shift it from there. However, at the end of the fiscal year, because this is a trust fund budget, the money rolls back into the trust fund cash account. So anything that's budgeted this year that doesn't get spent,
And you still have it.
we still have it. But what it does is that the city often goes by, when we're doing the base budget off of it, they're gonna look at like a 5-year trend. And 1 year of a lower trend of spending throws off our numbers. So we just want to make sure when I'm doing the budget that I track that next year that we fund the correct amount for that. But I think that, what we would have to do for our side, if there was a need to do a contract that was not a part-time seasonal employee, we would have to do a budget modification, basically. We do a budget
So
modification.
with permission of the city, you
Yeah.
can move it, but you can't just move it yourself. Is that
Right.
correct?
Exactly. You can't move funds out of staffing into contract staffing or into materials or something like
Even
that.
though it is not funded by the same account, even though it's funded from the trust fund.
Even though it's funded from the trust funds, we can't move funds from what we call 4101, 4103, 4109. We can't move funds. As far as I've been able, to follow up with the city on, we haven't been able to move anything from those three codes into any other numbers.
Whether it's general or.
So what I would probably do, the way I would do it is the amendment would basically say, let's say take $40,000 negative and move that back into the cash account. Then you take cash account and you move 25 or whatever that is into here. So you have to move it back in there. You just can't move it direct.
I understand, but so if you weren't going to hire a consultant, it would behoove you to hire that person as a part-time seasonal, whatever. You can do the same thing, you just hire them as.
It would be a lot easier because my understanding is that because depending on the cost, you have to go out to bid and work on the contract and everything. We're in a part-time seasonal.
Just hire somebody.
You hire somebody, they do live scan, which they get their thumbprint, making sure that they haven't committed any crimes.
Mhm.
And then they become a city employee, and then they have access to a city email, because if they're a consultant, then they don't have an email with us, and then it might be a consultant's email or their personal email. And the problem, I think Holly and I have talked about this too, which is that especially when you have access to donors, like people that have donated money, those lists are extremely valuable for other nonprofits.
Mhm.
Because having access to mailing lists of people,
Mhm.
email, contact, home, people that have donated for different causes. So you really want to vet anybody that's on there and having them on a city email, primary, hopefully like the same organization email, whether that's MPLFF or Monterey. We want to have it under one of those emails so that people know it's the authentic person contacting them.
Yes, I'll be very quick. The development position that we've been referring to now is part-time seasonal. And it would seem to me, from many years of observing how the fund development takes place for the library, it should be a part-time, a regular part-time rather than a seasonal. Because seasonal sounds like, it's only in the fall or only a month or two plus or minus chocolate and wine or something like that. It would seem to me that it should be, and Mary Jane was pretty much, even though she was volunteer, she was pretty much part-time all year long. And I think we need a regular part-time, if that's the correct phrasing, rather than a seasonal part-time. And I don't mean to bring that up to discuss at length right now, but I really think if I'm understanding the difference or what the term seasonal thrown in there could mean, I think it should be a regular part-time. Number two, so I would request that maybe we put that on in the appropriate agenda for the future. Number two, you were referring to a donor event at the end of December. Well, it's already practically the middle of December, and even if you could decide and send out invitations tonight, it might be too late for a lot of people who would like to come to say yes. And I was going to suggest doing it in January because we have Monterey Gives and emphasizing the library in that vein now, and we have chocolate and wine in February. And I think it would be a great way to kick off the new year. Plus, it would be a great way to get people to come to chocolate and wine, frankly, because they would, within a month or a little bit more, maybe 5-6 weeks, because it's later in February, if I remember, the 20-something. And so if we did this more like mid-January, it would be a good time to solicit ticket sales for chocolate and wine, and it would keep people's mind on the library maybe, because it's January, New Year, all that kind of stuff, because everything we've been reading and getting recently is for, Monterey Gives in the library and the history room and all that. So I would just recommend, especially given the short amount of time we have left this month, for people to plan an event around the holidays. I would recommend doing it in December for all the reasons I rattled off just a second ago. So please consider that I guess there's a team that's gonna plan that event, and that would be my recommendation. Well, I have one more question that I'll save till later, or maybe I'll make it quick, because it really was part of the consent agenda. In that survey, and it listed all of the staff positions. There was one referred to, it was 5.12, Chief of Division. I've never heard a library staff person referred to as Chief of Division. I've heard library assistant, executive director, all those, but who is Chief of Division? I mean, even it had a salary attached to it, so we must have it.
So these are the terminologies from the state library.
Yeah,
So the chief of division, that is.
is that Kim?
I think that's Kim right there.
I was thinking it was Kim because you're like head librarian or something like
The
that,
public
right?
services manager. So
Yeah,
there's different
she has a
terminology.
management thing. That's what I guessed, but I just hadn't ever heard the term Chief of Division.
Yeah.
And I was wondering who the heck that might be. Well,
And then
congratulations on the new title, Chief.
Give to the chief.
Okay, that's all I have to ask right now.
Wait.
can I follow up just real quick, just to
Oh,
just to
okay.
answer on the part-time seasonal, that's a classification. So
Yeah.
basically, the difference is, they work a maximum of 1,000 hours per year. It's not that they work seasonal, like during the time, it's that it's 1,000 hours max unless they're on CalPERS and they're retired annuity. And so if they're
Yeah.
retired, they can only work 920, where part-time means 30 hours plus benefits, plus partial
I
benefits.
mean, a minimum of 30 hours?
No, 30 hours. It's a 30 hours position. So it's a 30 hours per week position. Regular part-time in the city, which is under the 4109, is a 30-hour position.
So it's a minimum of 30 hours per week.
No, it's 30 hours.
It's 30.
It's not, you can't work more than that. We can't have somebody, the part-time person can't pick up extra hours.
No, but they can work 1 hour.
But they can't work 31.
No, they work 30 hours. They have a set 30 hours
Exactly 30.
per week
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah,
So it's not that they work 1 hour 1 week or 25, they have a 30-hour week schedule. So our regular part-time have a 30-hour per week schedule. Full-time is 40 hours a week.
yeah.
But then
So
part-time.
part-time is 3/4 time, really, 30 over 40.
Right,
And if somebody's seasonal and it's 1,000 hours, is that the max?
that's the max.
And it could be spread out over 52 weeks.
That's what typically when we recruit it, we tell people you're working generally about 18 hours or so
Yeah.
per week is kind of how we do it. So it is part-time, and I will say a number of agencies out there that are nonprofits have executive directors that are working in multiple agencies or representing multiple
Yeah,
agencies or work part-time. So I think having 30 hours or 40 hours in this position was 30 hours when the funding was split between general fund and trust fund. So at 30 hours, it's still on recovering what amount with the additional funds coming in through your benefits and everything else like that. That increases the amount that that person has to recoup to make that
Yeah.
position.
No, I just wanted to understand. So part-time seasonal, the person, the way we've scheduled it or the way it can be scheduled is almost, but not quite half-time,
Right,
18-hour week, you said.
yeah,
So a person could be regular, not in the official classification sense, but regular in that, well, I put in 18 hours this week, and for everybody's convenience, I'm gonna come in 4 hours this day, 5 hours that, I mean, they could be scheduled, or it could vary if there's a big event like chocolate and wine coming up.
Right.
But it could be spread out over the whole year, as if it were what I would call in layman's terms, a regular position.
right,
Okay, so it's more a matter of scheduling than anything else.
yeah, exactly.
Plus, it doesn't, do they get benefits? You said specifically the other one does,
Yeah, the regular part-time does. This one.
but the
is
seasonal
very
does
minimal.
not. Right, okay. well, they don't even work in layman's terms, half-time, so it's not surprising they wouldn't get benefits.
They get 40 hours of sick leave off, after they've worked for 3 months or something. There's some very specific things to the state that.
Yeah,
Also.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on this? Can we move along, or is there any public comment? Okay. Thank you very much, Alan, and thank you, Brian. Bringing us up to date on that. Next item is, about Monday open hours. We're gonna hear from Kim about how that's gone for the last 3 months or since August.
Well, Kim and Brian.
No, okay. And,
Because I think Brian was gonna look some more at some of the statistics and stuff. But overall, it's gone really well. The public has really embraced it. It's like, the new normal. We usually have a crowd waiting to come in at 2 o'clock. That's kind of caused a little bit of a crunch at the desk because of how many people have kind of waited all day and then they just come in at 2 o'clock and everybody wants computers, so we often run out of internet stations. And then people queue up at the desk with questions. And then we also are catching up on like voicemails and emails that have been left for us on Sunday and then the beginning of the day on Monday. So it tends to be a really busy afternoon. We've done limited programs. We've done some team programs. We definitely do see the high school students come over after school like we were hoping. And we have been able to use our team librarian who now works Monday through Friday. Monday is a day in her rotation of scheduling. We haven't opened the meeting rooms yet for like public bookings for like the community room. Just due to the limited number of staff we have in the building and the capacity for managing that sort of thing. But overall, I think things have been running very smoothly, other than since it's only a 4-hour day, there's like that crunch the mid-afternoon, right, when we open. Yeah.
Would it be helpful because of the crunch rate at opening to have a couple of staff here an hour earlier to deal with the email and voicemail stuff so that those are tucked away before the doors open?
Yeah, we tried at our practice is typically not to call people before we open because then they get confused about what hours we answer the phones and when they can get service like that. So typically we do open the desk in advance though, and that's like, making a list of the phone messages and these are the questions we need to answer. And we might cheat and send some emails and stuff. So yeah, we do work on that, but yeah.
how many staff do you actually have for Monday?
So we have Brian and myself and Francesca. We have our team librarian, Andrea, works Mondays. We have one of our regular part-time circulation assistants, Lucio. And then we typically have a page that comes in and works and a on-call library assistant and that helps work the desk and often an on-call librarian. So that way our team librarian is available to do programs and stuff too.
Marcia?
Are we moving towards a regular schedule on Monday? Like the same schedule at Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday?
I think that would change this, we would need a different staff on that side just to make sure that we could open up and expand hours on that day. I would looking at the numbers and most of them, the on Mondays, we started off with a soft opening because we wanted to make sure everything worked. We wanted to make sure all the computers worked, Wi-Fi worked, everything was going through because a lot of these things are set up on computer control in terms of the hours that they're off and on, everything. And so the first couple of weeks, I think we still had a good number of audience that came in on there, but we've rotated around, I'd say around 250 to close to 300 a day on most Mondays. So people are kind of coming in, and as Kim was mentioning, the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock hours seem to be kind of the busiest. And then towards the later times, it slows down. Like, when you get those, I think the 4 o'clock and the 5 o'clock hour, it typically starts to slow down there.
Is that comparable to Tuesday, was it Thursday, Friday, or?
Well, I mean, looking at,
Could you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry, I just asked if it was comparable to the rest of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
it's, we see like different patterns on the weekdays. I think some of that has to do with sometimes it's different programs or if there's something else going on in those days. But, for majority of the days, we're getting between like 350 to about 600. So if you're looking at that, it is roughly half on a lot of days that we're getting on there. And I think, if we pulled prior data, because Tuesdays were one of our busier days, starting off in the beginning of the week, that at least helps us, like, you're getting a lot of that check-in. We would do some of the check-in on Mondays prior to opening that day, but, you're getting a lot of this things done and having volunteers in there, the volunteers are pulling holds. And now we've increased our delivery with BG to 5 days a week. We were at 3 days a week prior, so this has actually helped expedite where a lot of our holds are coming in back and forth, our mail's coming in much faster. So all of those pieces, but I do think the one question I think would be, is it the earlier hours or is it later hours would be another question, because I know that has come up here for this board, is whether I was interested in evening hours again or not, or other days. But I think as of this time, we would have to have increased staffing on Monday to make sure that we had more staff to open either in the morning or later, because at 6 o'clock, we're gone by 6:15.
I guess what I was getting at is maybe for next year's budget request,
Right.
there was some talk about the fact that there are no libraries on the peninsula open on Sunday, and that, at some point we ought to work towards being where we were before the pandemic. Not, clearly not this year, but maybe that's something we want to look towards.
And I think what you said would include evening hours too.
Yes.
Because we used to be open till 8 o'clock.
Exactly, maybe not every night, but 2 nights a week or something like that. To actually be, if PG is open 1 or 2 nights a week. That kind of thing, and the fact that there's no library on Sunday, maybe that should be us, but that's something to think about down the road as, as we're putting the budget together for next year, that maybe that's something to talk about. So either expanded Monday or Sunday, or just go for Sunday, or go for the evenings, or something that we should talk about that.
When the Monday hours were chosen, it was as a result of a little study to find out where the greatest need was. So what was the runner-up on that? Was it evening or Sunday or?
I'd have to look back at those numbers on there.
You need to find out again.
Yeah, and
what people want next.
I will say, from a staffing side, one of the points when we were pitching this with the city was that I wanted regular staff to be assigned, on the Mondays, because what happens is, if you have on-call or part-time seasonal, they may not just want to work on a Sunday, right? And then you're consistently trying to recruit people to work the day, or you have to shift people's schedules around on there to adjust. But most people are working on the Saturday right now. So I think it's just a matter of us kind of figuring out what's in there. So that Monday, that was the thing about, we're here on Mondays already, and then adding in the teen librarian, and that shifted the teen librarian to full-time by moving that, and that increased the library assistant that we have there, because then we know those people are going to show up as regular, unless on vacation, unless they're sick, but having that regular person there is really helpful because you need a lead. You need a person that's the contact for the leads. And then so Sunday it may shift other managers too. And so that's where I felt like, on Monday, depending on how the schedule goes or another, there's all things to work on and look at. the numbers.
Right, so perhaps in the beginning of the year, prior to the budget putting together for next year, we should have this discussion about we're moving forward with more hours and
Mhm.
figuring out,
Well,
looking at the
we're-
data, figuring out which more hours we should have and how much, do you need another full-time librarian? What do you need? And then
Yeah.
going forward with that.
I'll just say, I couldn't agree more with the idea of having one or two evenings because we used to have a lot of adult programs in the evenings. And, starting at 7, ending at 8 when the library would close, that kind of thing. And I think restoring that kind of offering in the evening, by that I mean starting at 6:30 or 7, is very important toward moving back in the direction of pre-pandemic. And I know, just for myself, I dropped off 2 books on the way to our meeting here that I was returning from home. Well, people come to evening programs because on the way from the front door to here, they can drop off a book or maybe even pick up a book off the whole shelf or stuff like that. So, we should talk about it, absolutely. And, without hearing anybody else's opinions right now, if I had to vote for something, I'd say, if we're gonna increase hours, let's increase a couple nights from 6 to 8, and maybe, and then for those reasons. So just throw that out there now, but good idea to talk soon.
And have it be a data-driven decision.
Sure, maybe January or February agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Run. We'll get back to the additional hour question. Anyway, and next. Oh. The board will receive an update on Evans. Actually.
Okay. So we have an advocacy committee. It was an ad hoc committee, but, we decided to resurrect it because much work was to be done. And that is, 2 people from Friends and Foundation and 2 people from the board, Danny and myself from the board, and Doug Holtzman and Jerry Giamona from the Friends and Foundation. So, we talked about a couple of general things. One is, a communication strategy with city council for addressing the needs of the library. And not getting on the agenda necessarily, but during the comment period or something like that, but just keep the library in front of them. And what we decided is probably, it's too bad that Ally just left, because the Friends and Foundation are probably the best people to do that, not necessarily the board, but the Friends and just regular people from the community would be the best people to do that. But the best person to articulate what it is we need is you, so that we can have a sort of consistent message about that. So for example, after we open on Monday, somebody could stand up and say, it was wonderful, the library is now open on Monday, and it's really great, but did you know that there's no library on the peninsula that's open on Sunday, so that in the future, we'll be talking, something like that. Small messages to go to city council. That was one of the things we talked about. We also talked about a strategy for addressing the NCIP, which was the Neighborhood Improvement Program, Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program issue. Because this year, the NCIP rejected all the library proposals this year, and some of the neighborhoods rejected the library proposals as on the bottom of their list. So we thought about the fact that we should, for next year, articulate a specific and visible project that's likely to be attractive to NCRP members. Now, what that would be, I'm not sure, but, also, we've talked about the fact that anybody who knows your NCIP rep from your community could ask how to best advance the library's case. And it just so happens that at the holiday party, I ran into my NCIP rep because our neighborhood, which is New Monterey, is the biggest neighborhood association there is. I mean, population wise, it's very large. And I actually asked her, I said, you know, yes, the library was turned down. What would be the best way to address the library's case? And she said something that quite surprised me, which was, you gotta start coming to the meetings and advocating. And I didn't realize that people actually came to those meetings and advocated, but she said, oh yes, we get big groups of people.
You mean the neighborhood meeting?
Yeah, not the NCIP, which is now decoupled.
Wait, are you talking about the NCIP meetings, or are you talking about the New Monterey
NCIP.
neighborhood?
Neighborhood meetings, not so much, but, because you know, the Mayor Roberson kind of decoupled those in a strange kind of way. But anyway, to also talk to the neighborhood associations, and in particular, if the library is in what district? I don't know what district.
Downtown.
So the downtown district, I guess, is the one that puts forward the proposals, but if multiple neighborhoods apparently go in on a proposal, so if, for example, we could talk the New Monterey Association is going into, you know, with the downtown one, and they, you know, all advanced it together, that would be
You mean like having the House and the Senate agree on the same issue to vote on? Two neighborhood groups agreeing on something like,
But if,
let's say Old Town and New Monterey both said we need
yes,
a bigger screen in the community room or
right,
something, you
or
know?
we need the bathrooms upgraded.
But it was more than one neighborhood
Yes,
asking for the same thing.
Yes.
It's kind of like they were,
yes, because historically, if you look like at the sports center, there's a big thing, a lot of NCIP money went into the sports center. And I would bet you that it's not just that one neighborhood, it must have been this, the neighborhoods coming together and saying, this is good for the city. So somehow, to get the neighborhoods all saying, this is our library, it may not be in our neighborhood, but the books are there, and that's, you know, and it's a library for everyone. And so, I don't know if we're all in different neighborhoods, but, to be able to stand up and talk about a project, starting with the neighborhood association, but making sure to get to the NCIP as well, it's a good strategy.
before in CIP, it was called NIP, and I was a rep from Old Town
Oh, okay.
at one point. And I don't recall anybody coming to those meetings and advocating, I mean, somebody who wasn't already there because they were the NIP rep from their neighborhood. But I could just not be remembering because it wasn't yesterday when I was the rep from my neighborhood, but I don't remember anybody coming and saying, well, you know, I'm a resident of Old Town, Bob's the rep, but I'm a resident, I'm a neighborhood, and I'd like to say that we really would support blah, blah, blah in the library.
So how about the NCIP meeting? I mean,
So that's why I'm wondering, do they make time at the NCIP meetings for outside people, so to speak, to come and?
They must, because
They do.
right, because our rep said, people come to the meetings, that's how they get their stuff funded. I was stunned to hear that, because I was like you, I didn't think that,
Well,
that they did.
Especially when they're doing their comparison of the requests that have come in, then it's way to our benefit to have someone,
Everybody,
or lots of people come in and talk about what we want.
But this was total news to me. I was with you. I didn't think that any of them did that.
I mean, the whole Monterey, we asked for lighting upgrades, and so did, Monterey, one of the baseball fields or something, they asked for, for upgrades in lighting, and everybody said, oh, yeah, because the whole team came in and said, we would really like this upgrade, and
So
so
they came to the
they
neighborhood,
came to the
NCIP.
NCIP
Yeah, came to the,
in their uniforms.
okay, guys.
So they didn't like it, yeah, they didn't like our request. but-
Okay, so a strategy is to get people to go to the NCIP meeting when we come up with our proposals for next year to make sure that somebody from the library, and we can figure that out. I mean, I don't know if it's board members, Friends of Foundation, who it is, I don't know that it matters, but somebody or a group, whatever, we can make up a song or a dance or a poem or something and all go and just put it in front of their faces. I think that's what you need to do. So that's what I found out. Okay, so, then we talked about how to best interface with the Friends and Foundation. This is a good start, this advocacy committee, but we talked about, keeping this committee going with board members and Friends and Foundation to coordinate these activities. But the relationship should also be, we talked about it being issue directed, where, when we have a particular thing, like how do we get these NCIP things funded? We work together on these projects. And then, the last one was there should be an annual fund development plan, right, that the board should read and approve or agree on, and we should agree with the Friends and Foundation on what that fund development
goals
plan
for the year.
Correct, the goals for the next year. But, whether Friends and Foundation and the board do it together, whether staff proposes it, then we all tweak it or something like that. But we thought that it would be a really good idea to make sure that we're all on the same page about.
This isn't something that's generally on the board meeting agendas for the Friends and Foundation. Would you recommend that get put onto agendas going forward and have Doug or Jerry
You mean talking
talk
about
about
advocacy as well?
advocacy and to solicit?
I think so. And what we really in particular would like is more people from Friends and Foundation willing to go to meetings, to speak up, to just put the library front and center out.
Because there can only be two of us.
Right, and only two of us can be on the board.
Yeah, but
And we-
there can be more.
Right.
Folks from the Friends of Foundation. It doesn't have to be from your board even, but, I think Doug was recommending that there's be an advocacy group within the Friends and Foundation.
Right,
So
right. Absolutely.
that would,
I think it's a great idea.
and it's,
So-
fund development and advocacy are really related, but, there's things that we didn't know, about. Like, for example, Brian was saying, in his self-appraisal that we, the board, should advocate with outside agencies like our representatives or the state, or we didn't quite understand what that was.
Well,
Do you
every
have
year,
any thoughts?
every year the California Library Association organizes they promote a day in the district.
Mhm.
And they have they recommend that library directors or boards go to their appointed officials to just talk about the library and then talk about needs, because there are times when state senators and your representatives from state districts have appropriations available for different projects. And I know, for example, in the Bay Area, there's been several projects in Santa Clara County and Alameda County that have been funded by those state senate districts as, whether those, I saw the Campbell Library, for example, was $2 million expansion. This is a huge library system with a lot of funding, but they were able to get their state senator to appropriate funding, talking with them. So it's just finding those times, I think, to schedule the talk about the importance, of the library. And I think those days, like the day in the district, are ideal. And there is a California Library Association actually have their own lobbyist group that goes out there. So it's connecting and understanding what the issues are in the state about different things going on at the state library level in terms of funding coming down or funding from the state library that's going to be reduced or not. So it could be things about this is what the state library provides, because there were a number of, for example, these are smaller bits, but we have like our grant, which is online homework help and some of these programs that were provided by the state library, and the state library was defunded quite a bit. And so they cut those out. And I had talked with Kim about restoring those and a couple of things, and we talked and we added some of those online resources which were cut by the state. But we wanted to restore them so that our users still have access to homework help or job help. And those are the kind of things too, where if the person is funding for the statewide as well as advocating for local side, that's where I think it's ideal for us to come up with a time to schedule. And I did this in my past library system where myself and two other people would go and meet with the state senator and just set up an appointment with their chief of staff and then say, look, we just want to talk to you about library. And then occasionally we would invite other people that were in the same district, the same Senate districts or other neighboring libraries, so we could all kind of get together and talk over.
So do you in fact go and talk to, on these days, have you been?
Not as I've been here, I have not as I've done here. I've interacted with our state senator on different occasions and different events, but not specifically with a path forward in terms of library. So I think but I think it would be beneficial for us to see on those kind of things, like what is on their agenda that aligns with the library, like some of their own priorities, and then figure out a time that a group can go and meet with them during those kind of outreach days, and then say, we're doing this because every year California Library Association organizes this. And I know sometimes CLA also organizes things in Sacramento. So it's finding times for us to advocate in there for additional funding.
Well, I would imagine to bring a sort of small delegation, you and maybe one board member or maybe one community member, something like that. Is that-
Yeah, I think that would be
is that
great.
what often happens?
Yeah, because the thing is that the state library, if you see like a lot of our grants and everything in the following pages, like the grants are coming a lot from the state too. And so if the state starts to decrease the funding for libraries, then we also see a decrease in the amount of grants that are going to come up to us. So that's where I find that we have to advocate on kind of the high level, and then we advocate at our level, which says, by the way, we have a need for this building and we have, all these kind of things like that. And that's where they can sometimes look at state appropriations, depending on, it really depends on the budget year for the state of California. Right now, it's a pretty lean year, but I think getting in the ear of representatives is always good.
And I'm sorry, the day in the district is actually here. We would go to
Usually,
their office.
right, typically that's what they do. They recognize, sometimes what they'll do is CLA may give you a packet, like a kind of like a, like a day in the district. If we talk to the legislative group in there, they may have like a packet of it. A lot of times those are very high level, like the importance of libraries and this kind of, so it depends on, to me, it depends on what's the messaging we want, really what is the messaging you want to push forward, because some people might be, let's talk banned books, let's talk access, these kind of things, digital divide. And those might be some of their major talking points. Or we may want to talk about something different and talk about additional needs.
Talk about falling apart library.
There you go.
So to echo that, so when they have those meetings, they're in Sacramento, they're here.
They're here. They're typically, they usually recommend that we do them, contact our district representatives. And I've been there sometimes where a lot of representatives, they may end up going to Sacramento. So you may end up just talking with their chief of staff or something like that, because of a lot of, when I've done these in the past years, you schedule the date, but you're on the list of like, they've got 6, 7, 8 appointments that day.
But on different topics.
On different topics, the library is just one of them, but it's a matter of like for you to just try to make that appointment on there. Hopefully you can make that time with them.
And I would assume you have some sort of handout or something, some sort of takeaway that you can hand them with data on it or something.
Yeah, my experience with that is that because these people are going from one topic to the next in a very quick period of time, you want something very concise about like, this is what the impact is of the library, this is what we do, this is what the state does for us, this is what.
On one page, something, or
Half
a
page.
bookmark.
Yeah.
Bookmark.
Bookmark, yeah. You don't want to overload them with data and information because they're just.
Right. Yeah, so this might be something to work with the advocacy
Right.
group on.
Yeah, it could be Friends of Foundation, myself, somebody from the board, you know, it could be a one, and that way we have a group like that.
Okay. Any questions for Marcia? Or Jane? Is the other.
I would just observe that I bet, and I could be wrong and I lose the bet, but I bet that most people don't realize, I'll say how underfunded this library is, but they don't realize from how many different sources we need to get funding. You know, whether it's Monterey County gives, or if it's donations to friends, or it's, you know, the city, general fund, outside grants. I mean, and this may not be atypical of libraries in general, but I don't care what any other library needs or does. I care about this one. And so I think making people who we believe value libraries understand the tough situation this library is in. And you know, if we wanted to pick one little piece of physical renovation that was in the, was it G4, G3, what was the?
G4.
Yeah, in the consultants' suggestions, you know. And we say, we really need this, but we can't afford it. And if we can not go to a state senator as somebody peddling a place or an idea or a program, but that we're talking to them about something that they already appreciate. And I've done this with the state senator and a representative, both of whom are not in office anymore, because like Monning and I'm blanking on the other guy, the state representative, tall guy, always had a bow tie on. What was his name? Anyhow, I went in there advocating on behalf of senior services. It was partly when I was on the State Commission on Aging and the California Senior Legislature. So I went and talked to them and their people. They had their, I don't know if they call them chief of staff, but the head person plus the politician there, and we would talk. And because all of them were still employed, they're at least X years away from being a senior. So they had to envision almost, or they could say, oh yeah, I have an uncle or my parents or something like that. Whereas if we can go in there and rub shoulders and become buddy with a state senator who likes libraries, even though he or she's maybe only 50 years old, you know, good deal. And, you know, and then I think they would see anything for which they then advocate in Sacramento, bills, legislation, whatever, as something that in a way will help them as much as anybody else in the short term. Like if I talk to them about seniors and their needs, they might say, well, in 10 years, I'll know exactly what seniors need, because I'll be one. You know, yeah, I hear
But then
that.
they'll be turned out, so they won't be in the legislature.
Yeah.
You can't win, right?
But, you know, if we can find somebody that likes libraries, or somebody who says, yeah, I used to go to the Monterey Library and do X program or something. So that we're almost subtly bringing them under the umbrella of Monterey Public Library Advocacy Group.
I can add on that, which was when I had, talked with Assembly Member Addis. It was actually when we had the Pride event over at, the Custom House Plaza, and we had a table over there, and she mentioned, I just looked up right now, she co-authored this California Freedom to Read Act, Assembly Bill 1825, and she had mentioned to me she had worked on providing freedom to access materials in California public libraries when I saw her, so I know she's an advocate, and I worked with her